This episode is brought to you by Amazon's Blink Video Doorbell. Get more at your door with the easy-to-install Blink Video Doorbell. Get more connections.
Hey, I'm here for our first date.
More deliveries.
Hi, I have tacos for two.
Oh, thanks. We'll be right down. And more memories.
Babe, come down. I have a surprise.
All new Blink Video Doorbell with 2-year battery, head-to-toe HD view, and simple setup. Shop now at amazon.com/blink for just $69.99.
She's made up her mind to live pretty smart. Learn to budget responsibly right from the start. She spends a little less and puts more into savings. Keeps her blood pressure low and credit score raises. She's cutting debt right out of her life. She tracks her cash flow on a spreadsheet at night.
Boring money moves make kinda lame songs, but they sound pretty sweet to your wallet. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back in the Stone Zone. I can tell you firsthand, I know what it is to be targeted by a vengeful and politically motivated federal government. They have unlimited resources. I know what it is to be the subject of a trial presided over by a hostile and hateful judge who essentially will not allow you to mount any defense whatsoever. I know what it is to have a judge who won't even allow you to enter exhibits of evidence that would have proved that you're an innocent, even though under the law, it's the government's job to prove you're guilty. You're not required to prove your innocence. It doesn't really work that way. But the case of Erin and Chris Mazzei is so stunning, so overreaching, so outrageous that I wanted to bring Chris Mazzei on the show today to talk about it. The Mazzeis were successful California entrepreneurs. They had a history of developing entertainment content previously, directing and producing several feature films, all of which made money. But when they got a PPP loan back during the COVID-19 crisis, that's when the trouble started. Chris Mazzei, welcome to the Stone Zone.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you for having me.
So give us a kind of a quick synopsis of what went down in this epic prosecution of you and your wife. You were sentenced to 36 months of imprisonment, while your wife, Erin, was sentenced to 27 months of imprisonment. She is still incarcerated. The charges in the end were allegedly wire fraud and money laundering conspiracy for receiving a PPP loan to fund an entertainment project in Hawaii where you live. Tell us what happened.
Well, actually, we never lived in Hawaii, so that's the ironic part. We've always lived in California. Okay. This all stemmed because we had a project called Ohana that basically was a fictional character in a non-fiction world of Hawaii in the 1990s, dealing with the mob and the corrupt federal government over there. So I don't know if that's how it all stemmed from it, but we, during COVID, when it all happened, we were like everybody else, didn't know what was going on, was following directions by any and everybody. And, at that time, I was reaching out to our local banks, and they're like, we're not doing this program yet. We don't know what it is. And so that's when I started just kind of going online every day just to get questions. I had questions. I needed answers. And I reached out to, I don't even know how many different banks and loan originators, and one of them wrote us back and said, no, you can use projections. And it didn't seem off to me because back in the day, we used to own a No Fear store, and we got a traditional SBA loan. And one of the requirements is you fill out a whole Excel spreadsheet on your 18 months of projections. So it didn't throw up any irregularities to me or to us. So that is the issue that happened with the prosecutor. He didn't want to hear anything about the email. He just turned a blind ear. It wasn't part of his narrative.
So the loan originator advised you that it was proper to use payroll projections for the loan, which is what you did. You had done it previously when applying for an SBA loan. Ultimately, it was determined that the loan originator's guidance was incorrect. It would seem to me that agreeing to pay back the loan should have solved this issue. But for some reason, the U.S. attorney and a federal district judge, they seem to me to be looking more for a scalp rather than true justice. What happened next?
So, yeah, I mean, through this whole process, we once we learned that the information was incorrect, we said, okay, like, you've already seized the majority of it, because when we first got the loan, I'm like, I do not want any of this money in my normal account. Like, this is not my money. So we put what we were told we were allowed to pay ourselves, and everything else went into a specific account for Ohana. And, that right there is their money laundering charge. But once we found out that the advice from the loan originator was not proper, we said, okay, what can we do? Like, let's sell our condo. We had bought a condo over in Hawaii because we were planning on shooting this pilot in summer of 2021. So, we sold that, and we came up with close to $1.2 million out of the $1.3 million. That was the original loan amount. And they just didn't care. They're like, no, you guys are hard criminals. We don't care. They wanted to treat us like the other people that you would hear on the news that bought Lamborghinis and didn't have businesses. And it was just sickening to us that we were being labeled that when we're a normal family. I mean, we're basically similar to everyone that's listening to your program. We're not famous. We're not politicians. We're your average family that got targeted. And I think there's a lot of them out there that just don't have a voice. And so we're very thankful you're giving us a voice.
I mean, the case against you and your wife, Erin, seems plagued with prosecutor abuse from the start. Federal agents seized all your accessible assets prematurely in May of 2021, but that's nearly a year before any charges were filed against you in May of 2022, violating a requirement to file charges within 90 days or return the seized assets. This included placing what's called a lis pendens, a public notice that a particular property has a claim against it on your family home that had been purchased 3 years well before the COVID-19 pandemic even occurred, as part of the plan to squeeze you and coerce you into entering a plea agreement. I still find the entire thing incredible because you were bled dry. You had already paid back virtually all of the PPP loan, yet they decided to destroy you financially anyway, when the matter could have been civilly quite easily settled simply by paying them back. You operated on the basis of bad advice, but they had no interest in that. In fact, as I understand it, the plea deal banned any negotiation that would have prevented you from arguing for a reduced sentence. You have two small children, yet they insisted that despite the fact that you were first-time, nonviolent, non-drug-related offenders, that you had to do serious time, ripping your wife now, who's still behind bars, away from two young children. This is really quite incredible.
No, I agree. And the problem with the house is when we got served our target letter, we had over $1 million in equity in that house. And we couldn't pull any cash out for legal assistance, so we got stuck with the Hawaiian court-appointed attorneys, which aren't court-appointed. Like, they are literally, it's a panel of attorneys, and you look any of them up, and they're literally, their main focus is personal injury. So they had no idea what they were doing, and anytime we would push them to, like, hey, look at, like, what you just said about the assets being seized ahead of time, instead of actually doing anything, they just went to the court and asked to be removed. That went on for almost 2 years until my father-in-law saw all this, and luckily he had a little bit of money saved up, so we finally were able to hire a private attorney, but at that time, that's when the government was saying, if you don't take this plea, we're going to file charges against my mom, who's 77 and has had no issues with our business at all, just to bring in the family aspect to get us to plea. It was just disgusting.
Precisely what they did to General Flynn, threatening to charge his son if he did not take a plea, or former upstate New York Congressman Chris Collins, who they charged with insider trading, despite the fact that there's no evidence that he conducted any inside trading. But they threatened to indict his young son if he did not plead guilty. The most stunning thing about your case is learning that the U.S. attorney used the money you paid back to turn around and try to buy your family home in the foreclosure sale. In fact, they actually sent agents to go bid on it. So they forced a foreclosure instead of allowing a normal sale, which would have allowed you to keep some equity. On top of that, as I understand it, the government hasn't applied the money that you paid back towards restitution, even though the court transcript clearly states that that is what the money would be used for. So in other words, they double dipped, they stole your home, and they got to keep your money. This is a cautionary tale, because what happened to you and your wife, Erin, can happen to any American.
No, I agree. And it was just out of dumb luck that we found out about the foreclosure sale, because I just remembered I was talking to my best friend on the phone right after I told him what our sentence was, and we were basically crying together on the phone. I've known him since 7th grade, and he's a very successful mortgage broker, and he said, well, let me see if I can just buy your house for you at the sale. When is it? And I'm like, they're doing it in 12 days. The sale was scheduled for 12 days after our sentencing. So he has his guy that's been doing this for 30 years, buying foreclosed sales at the auction. You know, he had a certain amount he was going to be able to spend, and it went over that. But I have the text message, and I think I sent you a copy of it. Like, the guy said it was unusual because federal agents were at the auction bidding, and they didn't win. The house ended up going back to the mortgage lender. But I mean, I would have never known that unless he would have offered to purchase it. And the restitution it's a battle. I just got off the phone with my attorney, and he's going to be writing a letter to the D.C. office about having that put in from the forfeiture to restitution. But no one knows where the money is. Like, I've asked, and nobody can. I've written multiple letters to the District of Hawaii, to the court, and no one knows where it is. So that's a little concerning.
I must ask you, on a personal level, how has the impact been on your wife, Erin, and your kids?
You know what? Erin is a very strong woman. That's what I fell in love with. When she first had to surrender, the judge was cruel and made her surrender wouldn't let her get designated to her camp. She had to surrender to the Marshal Services in Fresno. We live in San Luis Obispo, California, so it's a hour and a half drive, and I took her there, and the Marshals didn't even understand why she was there. They didn't know what to do with her, so they put her in county jail in Fresno for almost 3 weeks. It was the toughest thing she's ever been through, and is one of the toughest things I've ever had to hear on the other end of the phone as her husband. She is fine now in her camp in Victorville. Obviously, it's not ideal, but she's just kind of keeping her head down and praying every day that we can get the truth out there, and somebody with some power can and some common sense can actually see what happened to us. Obviously, the conditions aren't great, but you know what? She said most of the guards and everyone there is friendly and understanding of the majority of the people. So she doesn't have bad things to say about where she is, but obviously this woman has never had a parking ticket since I've known her. So to even be anywhere near a federal facility is ridiculous.
So, Chris, have you thought about setting up a GoFundMe or a website where people can keep track of your case and maybe offer support?
Not really. I mean, I've been so busy. We own our own business. Through all of this, we were able to start a whole nother business under the most trying of times, and you know, it's doing really good. So that takes a majority of my focus, and obviously I'm raising 2 young boys as a pseudo single father right now. And you know, they're hanging in there. Our oldest obviously was more of a mama's boy, and I can tell he misses Erin. Our youngest, Nico, he always looked more up to me, so I think he isn't getting hit with the effect of it as much. But we don't need the money. I don't care about money. I just care about getting her home. But obviously our story could make an impact for other people. So I've thought about starting some kind of blog or something like that. And obviously Erin's keeping notes, and we are writers, so obviously this could be a book someday or a documentary or something that would just blow you away on what can happen to a normal family.
All right, Chris Mazzei, thank you so much for coming into the Stone Zone, telling us your story today, and we will be praying for you and your wife Erin and your 2 young boys. Don't go away, folks. I'll be right back in the Stone Zone.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Whether the so-called reporters at the Washington Post are deranged. In an article investigating the, quote, mysterious drop in fentanyl seizures on the U.S.-Mexico border, the Washington Post explores what they call a new and puzzling reality. The explanation, they say, is complex. Of course, it's only puzzling and complex if one refuses to acknowledge that President Donald Trump has stemmed the flow of drug smuggling by enforcing the law against illegals entering the country on our southern border. Fentanyl seizures have plummeted from 1,700 pounds in 2024 to 746 pounds in 2025, according to the Washington Post. The decline is occurring even as the Trump administration has deployed thousands of troops to the borders and expanded drone flights. With more boots on the ground, you'd think that seizures would go up, not down. Now, you might think that if you fail to consider for a second that the thousands of boots on the ground provide deterrence against Mexican drug cartels. Avoiding being thrown in prison, something cartels don't have to worry about so much under Joe Biden, is undoubtedly a significant factor in the drop of narcotics seizures. A White House spokeswoman responded to the Washington Post by saying the drop in fentanyl seizures at the border is only a mystery to the Washington Post reporters suffering from a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome, also known as TDS. Everyone else not affected by TDS knows the simple truth that President Trump's closed our border to illegal drug traffickers, and Americans are safer because of it. As of March, fentanyl traffic at the southern border had fallen by more than half of the same amount last year, while Joe Biden's open borders were still terrorizing and destroying America. The Washington Post's theory is the drugs just stopped being cool this year. At least that's essentially what they say in their article. You're getting this generational effect. Illicit opiates are just not as cool as they were, an epidemiologist was quoted by the Washington Post as saying. It's amazing how fentanyl apparently lost its addictive nature as soon as President Donald Trump took office, apparently. This is why I don't get my news from the Washington Post, for the same reason I don't eat out of the toilet. A new poll out from Atlas Intel of the 2028 Democrat presidential contest has Pete Buttigieg in the lead at 32%, AOC at 19%, former Vice President Kamala Harris at 17%, Cory Booker at 10%, Governor Gavin Newsom at 7%, Little Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania at 5%, Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan at 4%, and Reverend Raphael Warnock, the senator from Georgia, at 1%. You can make a poll, say anything you want by the wording of the question, the order of the questions, the size and accuracy of the sample. Every credible poll that I have seen shows Kamala Harris would be the easy front runner. Makes sense. She just spent $300 billion running for president. And AOC is a surprisingly strong second place finisher. Although my favorite remains an AOC Jasmine Crockett ticket. Make my day. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to the Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear the Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?